Welcome to 80s TV Ladies, part of the Weirding Way Media Network.
80s TV ladies, so sexy and so pretty. 80s TV ladies, stepping out into the city. 80s TV ladies, often treated kind of working hard for the money in a man's world. 80s TV ladies.
Here are your hosts, Sharon Johnson and Susan Lambert Haddam.
Thank you, Melissa. I am Susan.
And I'm Sharon. Welcome to 80s TV Ladies, where we explore female-driven television shows from the 1980s and celebrate the people who made them.
Sharon, sometimes I think it's good to get another perspective from another generation.
Yeah, I think it's meaningful to look at these shows with fresh eyes, which is why we decided to bring some awesome younger folks who were all born in the 1990s to watch these shows for the first time and tell us what they think.
Now, it's been a long time since we've had them on the show, so we're just going to jump right in.
Please welcome back to 80s TV Ladies, the smart and sassy, clever and classy 90s TV babies, Serita Fontanesi, Sergio Perez, and Megan Ruble.
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome back. I'm so excited to see you. This is your first appearance in season 2. We haven't seen you since season 1. Or heard you since season 1.
Missed you guys.
I missed you. The last time we talked was over Cagney and Lacey.
Yeah.
Lesbian coded icons.
Yep.
Yes. You took us right back.
I'll die on that hill.
I know it's been forever. I don't know what y'all did this summer, so why don't you tell us 2 cool things?
I'll start. This is Serita. I use cool loosely. I helped my dog overcome heartworms. So we've been on crate rest. And also I did make a summer bucket list and I've almost crossed everything off of it. So that's pretty fun.
That's awesome.
All right. What's one thing on the list that you crossed off?
The last thing that I did was I sat in a floaty on Barton Springs here in Austin.
That is one of my Austin things to do.
Come visit. I've got a guest room, 2 floaties. We can go.
Let's go. Like right before Rich and I got married, we got married July 31st. July 4th, we went to Austin, Texas, and visited my friend Buzzy lived there. We saw the bats. We saw everything. And I was like, we're going to go float down a river. And
yes.
And Rich was like, great. And then the day before, he had never done anything like that. And he got all nervous and weird and like, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go.
I will say the moments before it happened, I panicked and Michael, my husband, and 2 of our friends had to help me float across. like they coached me through it. So Rich, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then he went and then at the end, he was like, this is the greatest idea I had.
Yeah, I said the same. I was like, wow, this was such a good idea.
That's awesome. Okay, Megan.
Well, so my summer has been bookended with weddings. So I had one at the start of summer and I've got one in a couple weeks and it's awesome. I love weddings, especially ones that I'm in, because then you just get to go to an awesome party, celebrate your friends, and they tell you what to wear. It's incredible. So I've had 2, had one awesome summer wedding and we'll have another one soon. Very exciting. This is kind of lame, but I had a summer goal to not get sunburn, despite being outdoors and hiking and all of that stuff. And I have so far accomplished that. I got a little singed on the top of my shoulders one time, but we are taking care of our skin over here.
That is excellent. That's important. Wear sunscreen.
Sounds like a great summer.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
That is cool. Sergio, I know a little bit, but tell our listeners.
A little bit. I'll tell everybody something they don't know. Let's see. This summer I did 3 different play readings for 3 different queer Filipino playwrights in Los Angeles. They all know each other. Yeah, the ecosystem is very tiny, but I'm glad to finally be a part of it. I've been trying to break into that for a second now. My second cool thing is that this summer I went to RuPaul's Drag Con and got to yell at some protesters because there were protesters right outside, telling everybody as they were walking in that we were all going to hell. And I'm like, no, I'm going to Drag Con. And I got to meet a bunch of queens from Drag Race Philippines who I've been meaning to like see in person for like so long. And they're just so iconic. And I was really excited about that.
Drag Race is really taking over the world, is it not?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I did not know they had made it to the Philippines as well. That's awesome.
Like literally almost every country now has a franchise. It's crazy. It's like McDonald's.
That is fantastic. And I didn't know either of those two things. And I thought I knew what you did this summer.
I know what you did this summer.
I'm making a book movie reference just for those who are been sitting in a tomb for 20 years. I want to shout out to Brittany Taylor, our friend, for turning me on to Lois Duncan. And I know what you did last summer, but first book she turned me on to was Killing Mr. Griffin, which is an earlier book that she wrote. And she was trying to option it in 90.
Yeah, I know that was something that she really, really wanted to be a part of making a film about.
Brittany was amazing. Casting and then like pre-trend crap. And that was amazing because then it was like 10 years later, she was everywhere and they were doing every one of her books. Lois Duncan is the book author who wrote I Know What You Did Last Summer. And one of her other books was called Killing Mr. Griffin. And it's about a group of kids who kidnap their mean high school teacher and then oops, something happens. We're off track already and we're like minutes in.
That never happens to us. Never.
Okay, did we hear from everybody? What are two things you did, Sharon? We haven't even talked about our summer.
Well, went to New York City for the first time in probably 20 years. Saw 5 shows while I was there, amongst other things. I saw The Cottage, directed by Jason Alexander, starring Art McCormick. I saw Shucked, for which Alex Newell won a Tony this year. I saw Sweeney Todd, which not for me.
Have you ever seen it?
No.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with it's more about the Sondheim of it all. I also saw Hamilton, of course. And I saw Goodnight Oscar, which starred Sean Hayes. I now understand why he won a Tony this year for his performance in this show, because it's fantastic. Before New York, I spent a week and a half with my mom, helping her with some stuff around the house. So that was really great. We really got a lot done during the 10 days or so I was there. So those are my 2 things.
All right. Well, I'll tell you one thing. I threw a fundraiser with Melissa Roth for the TRR Foundation. We raised $5,000 to send to Choices for abortion access for women, travel funds for women to get there, because they're one spot, serving 7 states now. And it was a really fun party that we threw with a drag queen, Trixie of the Kinsey Six, and she was amazing. All right, enough of what we did this summer. Who did their homework assignment? Yay! Okay, for listeners, the 90s TV babies had to watch the following episodes of It's a Living from season 1, episode 1, and episode 13. The pilot, and You're Not Old, You're Fired. From season 3, episode 2, we just skipped season 2 for you. From season 3, episode 2, Cassie's cowboy, Ann Jillian dates a cowboy and has to decide what she's going to do about that.
For season 5, it was episode 2 called Her Back to the Future. And season 6, episode 1, Pistol Packin' Mama.
Okay, so those were the shows that they were assigned to watch to get a sense of It's a Living. We gave them a few more because we got some listener feedback saying that we didn't give them enough to really get a sense of the show.
And it's only a half-hour show.
Yeah.
So
it's also
time-wise, it's probably comparable to what your other homework assignments were.
Okay, well, Now we're just going to sit back, and I'm curious what you guys thought.
Who wants to begin?
Well, I love a sitcom. I love a workplace sitcom. This is a workplace sitcom. I love just the heightened characters and the shenanigans that they get into. And specifically for It's a Living, it was not what I was expecting. Just because we've watched Remington Steele, Scarecrow and Mrs. King, Cagney and Lacey, and I was just like, oh, like this came out. It premiered in 1980.
Yes.
Premiered in 1980. I was like, okay, like some of this might be a little dated. Like we're going to get some jokes that I just would not fly today. And it felt surprisingly well aged. Like I was like, oh, this is actually like pretty salient. And like the stuff that they were talking about, the fact that all these women in the back room were just talking to each other and barely any of it was about men. And if it was to disparage the men who were in their like restaurant doing some dumb stuff, touching people where they shouldn't be. I was thoroughly surprised by it. And I really enjoyed the episodes that you had us watch, especially the one with Sheryl Lee Ralph and her singing. But we can talk about that later. That's just my first initial thought.
I would just like to point out that we all had a physical reaction to Sergio saying her name because of the obsession.
Dee Mitchell, she will always be Dee Mitchell to me from Moesha. I audibly like screamed when I saw her come on screen.
Oh, so you didn't know she was going to be on the show until...
No, not until she appeared.
Wow. Okay. Sometimes that's the best, isn't it? To have a nice surprise like that.
It was a treat. So this was the first one that I was like, oh, I'm going to go back and watch the other episodes in between. Like I liked some of the other stuff that we watched, but I feel like I didn't have that like, oh, I definitely want to know what happens with these people. Whereas like, again, it kind of had this like Golden Girls vibe of just like gal pals who kind of like roast each other, but also have each other's back. And, you know, a couple of them do live together, not all of them, kind of going to that workplace comedy of it all. But I was like, they're fun. Like, this is fun. And, you know, the whole dynamic with their boss and like the back staff, and also as someone who was like broke in her 20s and was like a cater waiter, very much, you know, can relate to that like restaurant vibe. And also I think it's fun that this restaurant in Los Angeles only needs 4 wait staff. There are only 4 waitresses. They all are scheduled at the same time. They're all in each other's business and the rest of the like restaurant's business as well. And that's fun.
I agree with both Sergio and Sarita. I also went back and watched more Scarecrow and Mrs. King as well. Like I really enjoyed that and watched more of that. But I will also be watching more of this. I didn't expect to enjoy it though. I try not to look up a ton. I try to just sort of watch it and let the opinions wash over me. But just looking the intro and like just kind of looking at the poster, I was like, all right, okay, here we go. I loved it. I did not expect in a sitcom such nuanced conversations to be happening. And I really appreciated that because sitcoms necessarily have to have exaggerated stereotypes usually just for the form to work. But the fact that they could break those at times to have just women sitting and talking, I thought was really great. I really appreciated that.
That's awesome. Once again, you guys have surprised me. Sharon, did you think we'd have this reaction?
I did not. I'm at the point now where I have no expectations about the reaction of our 90s TV babies to any of these shows. But nevertheless, I am surprised that there is this universal, let's call it love for this show. That's great. That's fantastic.
Okay. All right. Now I have so many questions. Okay. So the first 2 seasons were on back to back. Then it went off the air for 3 years. And the last final seasons were actually syndicated. And so there's an actual break of years between season 2, which you didn't see, and season 3. Which casts did you like, and which cast members did you find the most exciting to you?
Okay, so I've been working with Susan, so I know like a good amount of stuff about this. Unlike Megan, you like just went in without searching. I have been like deep in It's a Living stuff for a second now. And watching the first episode, I was like, okay, I love Susan Sullivan, who played Lois, I believe. And I loved Wendy Shaw, who played Vicky. And I just thought like the dynamic between those two, like one of them's more mature, one of them's like further along in her womanhood than Vicky is. Like the conversations that they would have were very pointed. And I believe like that cast, just because it was a pilot, maybe that's like what they were going for, like really, really worked. And I know that for season 2, they like retooled the whole thing. And I don't know what they did. And I know we didn't watch anything from season 2, but I'm curious about why. And if you could provide any insight at all into like what that was like, because we just avoided it completely.
Basically, from what I've been able to figure out, the general consensus seems to be that they thought the first season was too sexy.
Oh.
They definitely got feedback from one of their sponsors. They lost a sponsor after the pilot because of the outfits and because of the conversation about having sex.
But she's a virgin. The whole conversation. She's a virgin who can't even drive.
Right. She's choosing not to. It's a conversation about like the choice of abstinence.
Right. Like, sorry. The outburst of a clueless reference. But yeah, that's so fascinating to me that it was too sexy when the whole plot centered around her choosing not to have sex and being okay if that means she loses a relationship. Like that's like, you know, there's a lot of power in that. Absolutely. Of her making choices for herself and her body and what her like line in the sand is. But there's no sex, quite literally.
But the women are advising her to have sex. And literally a sponsor was very upset by that. And this was a time when sponsors would literally pull out of a show. So definitely the costume change, from what I understand from Jane Espenson, was because they thought those outfits in the pilot were too sexy.
The off the shoulder,
the slinky dresses. And they were a little like, are they nightclub singers or are they waitresses?
Well, there was the comment in the first episode where Ann Jillian comes in like her like slinky dress. And one of the other girls is like, you walk to work in your like outfit. Like, isn't that a little scandalous? And it's like, oh, so it's okay to wear it in the restaurant waiting on these tables, but not to walk from your car to the restaurant.
And very interesting. And then the outfits they end up in are very sort of like matronly a little bit. Like they're black and white, and they have the puffy sleeves. There was an overcorrection,
absolutely, and especially like as someone who very much pays attention to the wardrobe and the costumes and like what's the story that's being told here. The change in the wardrobe also felt like the show trying to be taken more seriously, which personally I thought made the jokes even funnier because it's like, this is all so absurd and everyone's trying to be such grown-ups. But like there was like a visual, other than obviously the cast changing, but like a visual aesthetic change in the show. And I mean, this makes sense now. Also, I'm curious, do you know which sponsor it was that pulled out?
I'd have to go look it up. I don't know it off the top of my head, but
I'm just fascinated.
Yeah. And it's in one of my notes from my early research. So what happened with season 2 is that Susan Sullivan is gone. And again, she ends up on Falcon Crest the next year and stayed on Falcon Crest and was amazing. But they knew there were too many characters in season 1. There's too many women in that room to navigate. And I felt that in the pilot. Rich didn't. He was like, it's fine. But the reason I didn't give you season 2 is it's a little bit off tone from the rest of the show. Susan Sullivan is gone, and they bring in Louise Lasser. And I don't know if you guys know Louise Lasser because she was big in the 70s. She was Mary Hartman.
It was meant to be kind of an absurdist version of a soap opera.
Louise Lasser, she's very funny. It's amazing to watch her work. And Megan, I mean, like you guys would all enjoy watching her. She's just in a different show. And it's hard to figure out. So I felt like it was too much to throw that at you. There wasn't an episode from that season that I was like, oh, but this is cool this way. She did some early Woody Allen. She's very New York. She's very, like, just a unique comedian. She's amazing. She's just not a sitcom actress.
And especially not in this one. Her character was a recent widow, and they were trying to figure out a way to make that funny. And it can't, I'm not saying it can't be done, but they weren't successful, in my opinion, in making it funny, at least, especially not for her character.
Well, it was a little bit of an overcorrection, right? Like, okay, so they were talking about sex and they were having a thing. Now let's have somebody on to talk about their dead husband who just died.
Which, listen, I'm a gallows humor gal. I think there's really great ways to do it. But everything you're describing about this actress, just what you said, is not a sitcom.
And now I feel like I should have given you a Louise last year.
Well, it's okay. We can do it on our extra credit on our own time.
Yeah, that one's for Patreon.
There you go. Let's cover the obvious 90s TV babies. Is it feminist? Is it progressive?
I think it's feminist. I think you have women sitting, talking to each other, having nuanced conversations. I think there's an element to it that gets difficult, again, because it's a sitcom, and like part of the structure of a sitcom is that you have people operating out of their biggest weaknesses, and also you have like stereotypes that have to be played into to a certain extent. But I think even with that happening, like I said earlier, like I think it's really neat to watch them talk and interact, and it brings up some women's issues that I was like, cool, that's a really neat thing to talk about in the pilot, them sitting down to talk about sex, and everyone in a sex positive way having a different opinion is really cool. Them just having different political opinions, as we kind of see in the gun episode. That's really exciting. Having a woman be like really excited about a guy and then finding out that he's a pushy, not nice person, and standing up for herself is a really incredible storyline. But then at the same time, and I probably shouldn't be the person who's commenting on that, and I acknowledge this, but like you have finally like a Black female character on the show, and her stereotype seems to be that she's Black, and that's it. And it's a little like, oh. And then there's other things like that on the feminism spectrum too, where it's sort of like we didn't watch a ton of episodes, but in our defense, we are all professionals within the entertainment industry. And I am certain that all three of us are very used to glancing at a script and needing to pick up tone and themes very, very quickly. And so when you see in almost every episode there being a like sexual harassment thing that is addressed in from a range of like, this is not okay, to like, isn't this funny? Those were the moments where I was like, oh, this feels like a man wrote about a woman's issue without consulting a woman. And there's a couple moments like that where I was like, yeah, I get it. We live it. We get it. Can we talk about something else, or can we talk about it in a more nuanced way? I don't need someone's butt getting pinched every episode for you to remind me that like this is a show about women.
Okay, I am like cackling because the butt pinching specifically.
So much.
It was just like, oh, wow. Again, I have worked in like the restaurant industry before, as I'm sure we all in adjacent whatever, especially living in LA. Like, I'm deeply aware of the sexual harassment present in service industry jobs / in the workplace in general. But somehow it all got boiled down to there's one guy who's a regular at the restaurant who pinches butts, and you just got to suck it up until it happens to the boss. And now it's a problem. And it was like, she just won't understand until she gets her butt pinched.
You know, actually, that to me, that is very typical of workplaces in general. Unless and until it affects somebody higher up the food chain, something is not going to be addressed, whether it's butt pinching or something else. But that's usually what it takes to get somebody to take action on something.
I think that is fair. It was just like the fact that it's only a butt pinch, and like each one of them has like this very big and like their like archetype specific reaction to it, right? Like one's ready to fight. One is like, I don't know, customer's always right. It's not that big of a deal. Like, you know, the people pleaser, like everyone had like which that's where the formula of a show comes in. So like, similar to Megan, I definitely think that it was like feminist. I mean, obviously it was making men so upset they were willing to take their money away and advertisers were pulling out. If that's not feminism, I don't know what is. But, and also, which, you know, I think I say this for every episode, right? Like, where are the Black people? Like, I know we get Sheryl in later seasons, but she is one person. And yeah, her character, kind of the most interesting thing about her is she is a Black woman in this space. Right? Like, like, I'm here for the girls, the gays, the theys. Like, you know, like if we were to do this show now, which this is also, I think, one of the few shows that I feel like could very easily, of the stuff that we've watched, very easily get remade today. And in some ways it has in like other types of working gal shows, whatever. But like, you know, there's a very classic formula. Like even I said Golden Girls earlier, and I think what I really wanted was designing women of like a group of women together in a workplace. There's giggles. There's some real stuff that goes down from time to time, right? Like I live in Texas. I'm originally from Texas, deeply aware of the gun conversation. And when we moved here, my husband was like, so we should get a gun, right? And I was like, absolutely not. Okay, Mr. California. Right. But like, so like there were absolutely pieces that are still super palpable today. And even like the cowboy episode, like he's like an oil guy from Texas. I was like, I definitely know that man. Like that is an archetype that I'm deeply aware of. And honest, like I was very curious to see where that episode was going to go. Like and maybe this is like the trauma of modern TV. I was like, oh no, she's going to end up in like an abusive relationship and we're going to have like a black eye scene that we're all going to have to deal with and like process and like, and it's going to be like, you know, the after school special. And honestly, I'm glad that that's not where it went, because that, while is important storytelling, is exhausting storytelling. And, you know, the fact that the story stopped with like, he was really pushy and she was like, you know, enough is enough. And then we get jokes about, but the mink coats, like, you know, was very fun. And again, like, that's where I'm like, oh, I feel like this is a show that would translate into modern time pretty easily.
And do we have, I mean, like, I'm thinking of modern workplace comedies. I mean, obviously The Office, obviously Parks and Rec, but what's the one, is there, I mean, The Bear, I guess, is a workplace, not comedy.
Sure. I was like, comedy?
I like that. Yes. Workplace, not comedy. Exactly. I don't think, though, that I can't think of any recent ones that are all women, though.
I definitely cannot think of one that's all women.
No. In fact, most of them I can think of, women are not even what I would call like the primary characters.
Well,
Yeah.
Abbott Elementary.
An argument for Always Sunny in Philadelphia being a workplace.
Oh,
which it kind
Abbott
of,
Elementary is a workplace, but it's still not, it's not all women.
but it has women driving it in a
Yes.
way.
Yes.
And Cheryl's back.
Sheryl Lee Ralph.
baby. So that's the key to a good women-driven story.
Cheryl Lee Ralph.
Ralph.
Yeah.
I'll buy that.
The official 90s TV baby statement about this. I wanted to jump in really, this is kind of backtracking a little bit, but I did want to say too, I also started the pilot and was like, whoa, too many characters. And then got like 5 minutes in and was like, nah, this works. I really like this. I like the diversity of it. I feel like everyone is getting a moment. I feel like I could watch a character-centric episode of any of these characters and be interested about what they have to say. and was actually kind of disappointed when we jumped ahead, not only because I liked some of these characters and they were now missing, but because I was like, oh, I liked how many there were and how many voices we were getting on different topics. Yeah, so I really liked the amount of characters. I also get, though, that like that's a Herculean effort writing wise.
But similarly, I was like, ooh, I love how many people, like, you know, thinking about The Office or Parks and Rec, right? We have our core, you know, 4 folks maybe that we're following, but there's this whole universe of regulars that we experience. And that's where I think I assumed where the show would go. And then obviously, you know, I watch one more episode and half the cast is
gone.
But yeah, I agree with Rich. What happened to women supporting women, you know? Where I wasn't overwhelmed by how many people were on screen.
I think what's cool about that is that, so my favorite character ended up being Nancy, which is how I know I'm old now, is that I was like, yeah, this lady is in charge. She is here for the friendship, but only until it interferes with work. And then we need to get back to work now. And I was like, oh, I'm old now. That's fine. That's fine.
It's hard not to love Marianne Mercer. She is pretty great.
So good. But also, like, if part of comedy formula, to quote one of my teachers, is you put the 2 characters together that will give each other the worst possible time. The more characters you have in play, the more combinations of that you have. And so in watching some of the later seasons where there were less characters, it was like there was one person that really didn't get along with Nancy. And then everyone else was on like some sort of gradient of that, rather than like this situation plus Nancy plus whoever the other character was created animosity between them. And so there's more like, there's more possible pairings for chaos and tension. But they still did it. Like in later seasons, there was still nuance to all the different relationships.
Okay. Now, and I'm just going to caveat this by saying that we have interviewed Paul Kreppel, who played Sonny Man, in a previous episode.
And we met him in person.
And he's awesome. He's really quite delightful. But I'm very curious, since we mentioned butt pitching, let's talk about the character of Sonny Man and what that read to you guys as 90s TV babies.
Again, maybe this is because I love Golden Girls and Designing Women, but I thought Sonny Man was going to be our stereotypical gay friend in the group of women. Like that was like my first seeing him on screen. I was like, oh, okay, we found, like, you know, every Golden Girls only had it for the first season. He was the guy who cooked in the house. Yeah. They had a male roommate. And he would always cook for them.
I think it may have been just the pilot.
The pilot. Yeah, you're right.
Which is crazy. And then he's gone.
And then never to be seen again. But, you know, we had Anthony in Designing Women. Like, that's a very common shtick.
Also not gay. And I thought he was gay.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, not gay. I totally, we've just started rewatching that. Not gay. I was like, he's gay.
It never occurred to me that Anthony was gay.
Susan, you're lying to me right now.
I am not lying to you. Anthony gets married. Childhood? Anthony gets married to Sheryl Lee Ralph.
Oh my God.
I watch Designing Women every morning getting ready for school because I have been 77 my whole life. And the way that I'm going to have to like revisit, I'm blown away.
It's like the Shazam. It's like some...
Yes, this is the Mandela effect.
It is a history I was sure of. And there is nothing at all. He is not gay at all.
Wow. Maybe that's an indictment on me, you know? Maybe I need to look within.
I know. Me too.
I do tend to be oblivious about some things that later seem obvious, but I never, ever got that vibe with Anthony. I have no idea why I did or didn't, but it surprised me the first time you said that
I'm so glad, Serita, that you and I... At least I don't feel
I'm
so
with
insane.
You. I swear, like Anthony, like he was like, I'm really going to have to like go back and really take a look, because never once did I ever consider Anthony as straight. Which again, maybe that's more of an indictment of me than the writing. And I'm willing to sit with that truth, you know?
I think it's admirable to walk in and be like, yeah, everyone's just gay until they're
Everyone's just gay
Fully
until proven
gay
otherwise.
until proven otherwise.
And
Yes.
maybe for me, it's the exact opposite. Everyone is, at least certainly at that time, everyone is straight until proven otherwise, or some indication of otherwise.
Which that's the other thing is I was like, oh, like because of the time, the joke is that he's gay, like, which like is not a joke. Like it's just a fact. And I was like, oh, like, but it's fun that like he gets to be around with the sugar baker.
No, it's
bringing it.
It is
back
a
to
complete
this show.
Yeah, but listen, don't worry. Don't start watching Designing Women yet, because it's coming.
Okay, I'll wait.
I mean, I guess you can actually.
I think
I'll keep
it's a
watching.
valid reading of the show.
Thank you.
No. Anthony
Melissa is jumping in.
Thank you.
Anthony is not
Anthony
gay.
is gay. He was not written as gay, but he's like the gay guy. Yeah. They don't think that, like, they didn't write him as gay, but no, Anthony plays gay.
Okay, Melissa's on our
Any
side.
reading of that show, post, and even like when I was watching it, like I didn't know he got married. I never watched it through the end.
Which is what I thought Sunny was going to. I thought we were going to have another Anthony.
When they reboot the show after 80s TV Ladies makes it super successful on streaming,
Yes.
That's the only way you could do Sunny, I think.
Yes, otherwise Sunny's a creep.
Yeah, that's how you do Sunny.
I think we all know a Sunny. That's my thing that I was thinking about. We all know a young, musically talented man who is a creep and a people pleaser. And I just think that that's a universal thing that we all share. I don't know if anyone has anything they want to sound off about.
This is such a niche joke, but he's such a musical theater tenor.
Yes.
Like that's exactly what he is.
Yuck. Wow. Yuck.
He's the guy who, in his like high school theater, got all the leads and played SpongeBob, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, we love him!" And they all thought he was really, really hot. When in reality, he could just hit the notes.
Okay, here's the thing.
I think we're going to learn a lot about musical theater right now. Go ahead.
Every theater department has the one straight dude who is like vaguely good at acting, as in he remembers the lines and occasionally emotes. He can, to Sergio's point, hit the notes on beat. Like the bar is in hell. But because he is, you know, the one of few in the space, if any, in the space, especially like when I was in high school, I was in a small town, like, you know, even in college, which we all knew what that theater department was like. And I have a very specific person in my head of who Sunny is, and I will not say it. I'll tell you guys later. But the problem is it's a big fish in a small pond situation. And so this person gets this idea of like, oh, I'm so good. I'm so talented. My ego is overinflated. And then they finally get into the real world and it is devastating, soul crushing. They're just not like thriving at all. And it goes one of two ways. Either they're like, you know what, let me learn a lesson and like get over myself and like find a hobby and like become a real person. Or they double down and they become a huge creep.
I want to add and not just because you said you had him on the show. I would have said this either way. Kudos to him as an actor, because that like role and that stereotype, even just his lines, could have become so creepy so quickly to the point where we would have watched it now and been uncomfortable. And instead we're all watching it now going, not that's okay, but I know that guy. And the thing about that guy is that, which I think he captures so well, is that it's not usually coming from this place of intentional maliciousness. It's I say this with the utmost love. It's coming kind of from a place of stupidity. Like he doesn't get that what he's doing is not okay.
He's a Ken.
Yeah, he's just a child. And it's kind of, I think that's what stops it from being something that we watch now and go, ugh. And instead we watch now and go, SpongeBob.
He's in his Mojo Dojo Casa house.
He's in his mojo. He's such a Ken. This Ken's job is music.
I think Paul will be very happy to be compared to Ken.
I also liked too, and we were given an episode that was very musical as well, but like I liked that there was an element of music in each episode because of him too. That there were a lot of jokes that came out of that, which was fun. And also, I don't know, I think I'm a music lover and I am a musical theater person. So like, I like that little touch to it. It breaks up the comedy nicely as well. You have other jokes that can happen.
Yeah, I love the music in the show, and there's a lot of it. One of the challenges apparently they had when they were trying to get the show for streaming and stuff like that was clearing all the music. Paul Kreppel was saying that there's actually like 7 episodes that didn't make it to streaming just because they couldn't clear the music. Because there's music in every episode. And sometimes it's song. Like what's surprising is it's not public domain songs. It's like songs. And sometimes they're parodies. So you could probably get away with it. But a lot of times they're not. But I love, they do other episodes that are big musical numbers because they have talent in that cast. And it's really quite fun. Okay, so anybody else that sort of popped for you or any episodes that felt particularly... I'd be curious to talk about the gun episode for a minute, but if there's another episode that you guys felt, oh, this was interesting to me.
I mean, I loved the cowboy episode. I was in my house, screeching, "Cowboy, take me away." Like, again, I'm writing the modern version of...
You're ready to go.
This show. Yeah. As soon as this strike is done, put me in, coach. But I like I said earlier, part of that episode, I was very much, I had primed myself for an after school special moment of like, and now we have to talk about DV and the glitz and the glamour that might, like the love bombing that might distract. Like I was fully prepared for like a heavy episode. And again, was glad that didn't happen. And still the point got across of, she is in a controlling relationship, even if it's not like physical abuse or even like outright emotional abuse, like it is an unhealthy relationship. And her being like, no, I told you, like my friend needed me. And that's really important because, one of the other girls needed to get to her daughter's play. And him just being a bad boyfriend, like not caring about the things that she cares about. But it was done. I loved how she's like having this very real moment in this relationship and having to like make a serious decision. And then one of the other girls is like, the whole time is like, it should have been me. It could have been me. He was sat in my section. Like, so like the show managed to like keep it still really light and in the universe of there are 4 women who work at this restaurant and they are all the servers all the time on the same shift all the time. And again, as much as they are coworkers, they are friends and they like have each other's back and that like that love that is still there.
I agree with you about the tone. I actually was very surprised looking back at this show, having not really remembered it. I remembered Ann Gillian, but I didn't remember this show that well. And I was really pleased watching it again, how much it managed to be funny, real conversations with the women, and yet not feel too after school special.
Or preachy. It got its point across without feeling like, this is your lesson of the week. This is... it felt like this, things that happened to and that were dealt with by real women as opposed to characters on a TV show.
I would like to see Susan Sullivan and Sheryl Lee Ralph in another workplace comedy. That would be great. Where they're
in charge this time.
Yes. So I'm curious what you guys thought of the gun episode, and I'm curious what you would do, who you'd be, and what you would do in that kind of situation. So the gun episode is Crystal Bernard is from Texas. She plays Amy, the character of Amy, who is from Texas. And then Sheryl Lee Ralph is playing Ginger, who who is not from Texas. I don't remember where she's from. And they are roommates. And Ginger discovers that Crystal keeps a gun under her pillow. And, conflict ensues.
Your thoughts.
Your thoughts. And any experience that you have or how you feel like you would handle that.
I thought it was really silly that at the very beginning, they pan to the table and it's all of these people wearing bright red hats, because it just made me think, wow, we really haven't gone anywhere. Like, we are still here having the same conversation. The way that the episode ends, where it's just like, there's never like a resolution to it. It's never like, I'm going to get rid of my gun. It's never, thank you for listening to me and doing the thing that made me feel safe. It just ended with a joke and like a little button. I was like, okay, so this tells me that we're still here and it's still the same conversation. And we are getting into the same discussions with people where it just is never ending, and it never has a resolution. And it's been coming up on my TikTok a lot lately. And I regret talking into a mic right now, right next to my phone, about what this is, because for the next 5 days, I'm going to get just all of this gun control stuff. And I just don't want to see it.
So you feel like on your phone, you're going to be served up now.
Oh, 100%.
Content.
Yes.
Really? That's how TikTok works. It's listening to you and picking up on what you're saying and what you're talking about. As someone, I don't know anything about TikTok, so.
But really, like, technology is so deeply insidious, and that is why, like, ultimately, like, most of these apps don't need to actually listen to what you're saying because they're tracking so much more information. There's another great article about, great article is a strong word, but this teenage girl, she was like 16 or 17. She was pregnant and her pregnancy was outed to her parents via Target, because Target had been tracking her like purchasing habits, and then noticed that she was spending more time in the baby aisle in the store because the cameras are up, right? Like, you don't even have to have your phone on you for someone to be paying attention. And this is why also, not to make it so political, but like, I guarantee you there's nothing in the vaccine that has anything to do with tracking you, because there are so many ways for like entities to already be tracking. They don't need to get involved in like biologics. Like, be serious.
Yes, that's too much work. What about using a VPN? Does that help at all in terms of
we're going
so
down
a VPN actually, yes. So this is something that we recommend a lot for people who are looking up abortion services, who are looking for even like domestic violence services, right? A VPN will help like add a layer, like a shield, basically.
For our listeners, for the special content we're going to think, what is a VPN?
Swear we'll get back to the show.
Sorry.
So it's basically it's like something that you can download to help encrypt your internet, so that what you're researching, what you're sending, what you're receiving gets protected. This is also why, like, I tell people, don't text on your phone about anything you don't want on the front page of the newspaper, right? Like, if it's just a regular text, it is not, I don't care what you do, it's not safe. WhatsApp, Signal, there are other entities that are end-to-end encryption. That's what you're looking for, where both what is sent and what is received gets protected. We really win.
We're really going there. Okay, we're gonna start another podcast.
Yeah.
We're
We
gonna
can talk
call
about
it.
this. Look, Patreon listeners, if you guys want to know more about technology and how to be safe online, call me, beat me if you want to reach me.
Join our Patreon and send us your technology questions, and we will have a
I
segment
work in
called for
reproductive
Patreon only
justice.
called Ask Serita, and she will answer your technical questions.
And we'll send
I'll do
it
my
on
best.
a VPN virtual private network.
There you go.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I work in reproductive justice in a hostile state. These are the things that occupy my
That are
time.
very important. Okay, well,
Thank you.
Sergio, I hope that you do not get any gun TikToks based on this conversation. But if you do, in TikTok, are you able to block? Does it let you?
You're able to. Our kid is not interested.
Yes.
That's all I know.
I'm doing
don't-
that.
This is my other last tip, I promise. Anytime I encounter content that I am just really not trying to mess with, like I do this a lot with any like diet ads, I report them as hate speech because it's not going to get taken down, right? It's not actually hate speech, but it does tell the platform, like, I'm really not, like, if you show this to me again, I'm going to leave your app. And they want you to stay. So
Interesting. All right. So
Did either Sergio or Megan have any thoughts about the gun episode that we haven't touched on yet? I know we went down a side road that took us places
took us to Texas.
we weren't expecting to go, but was still very, very interesting and informative.
I might have the spiciest opinion on that episode, and it's still pretty mild. But my mild salsa opinion on that episode is that I was actually really excited for like what we had seen in the other episodes, like a nuanced conversation with multiple opinions being issued to actually happen around something like that. And I don't think that happened. And that was very disappointing. It would have been more interesting to, and granted, I'm looking at this from a modern lens and I understand that, but it would have been more interesting to me if I forget the Texans character.
Amy.
If she hadn't been the stereotype of the opinion that we expect, if she had, like, it would have been interesting to me if she had been a responsible gun owner, which if you have a loaded gun that is in a
stuffed animal.
just also like, anyways, what is any of this accomplishing, ma'am?
The killer wouldn't find it. if it's in the pillow in a stuffed animal. That's a Wendy Williams reference, by the way.
I got it and I loved it.
Wendy Williams is always talking about the killer. We don't know who it is, but they're out there.
That killer.
Yeah, if you're mongering. Yeah.
If you're wondering, statistically, it's your boyfriend. Go ahead.
If she had been a responsible gun owner and then we had been able to like, or if there had been somebody else, or if she wasn't a responsible gun owner, which she wasn't, and there had been somebody else who was, or somebody else who was like, I don't care about this. Why should I care about this? Like any other than just like, this is good, this is bad, would have been more interesting to me, where instead the interesting conversation that was happening in the episode was about wallpaper. I was way more invested in this couple sorting out their wallpaper situation than I was in the gun situation. Although I will say, I do appreciate, even though it was not really a resolution, I do appreciate that she as a friend was willing to be like, okay, I will compromise because I care about you as a friend. Again, it being written off as a joke at the end was kind of concerning. It felt like they started a conversation that they weren't ready to have.
It is also not lost on me, though, that it was like the Black woman having to advocate for any type of responsible gun ownership as someone who has been in that position and had to talk about, like, I said earlier, when we moved to Texas, my husband was like, we should get a gun. And I was like, as a Black woman, I'm not comfortable having a gun in my house. Like, it, in this economy, are you kidding me? And again, in the modern retelling, because I'm going to manifest this show to today, right? Like, that's a really big conversation for what does it mean for gun ownership of a Black person versus a white person? What does it mean as women to be gun owners? What does it mean? Again, there are like, polls will show you that Texans believe in like responsible gun laws and safe gun storage. And meanwhile, she's just recklessly under her pillow.
Well, it was also such a, that's where I think we're looking at a 1985 conversation. I'm not quite sure exactly what year that was, but it was a very, less subtle conversation. I agree that it was sort of this she said, and nobody else really seemed to go into that conversation.
Yeah, I would almost even argue like it wasn't a conversation.
Yeah.
It almost became like a joke setup. And it was like, oh, this is too important to just be a joke setup. The wallpaper can be a joke setup. I would also like to know where to get naked hockey player wallpaper though. was kind of down with that. That was a good compromise.
All on Etsy. There's someone out there that makes it. You can also make custom wallpaper. There are like websites where you design it yourself and it does a repeating pattern.
Come on, naked hockey players. Sergio, I'm in. I want to see that wallpaper. All right. Final thoughts. And then we're going to have to wrap it up. Once again, this conversation has been fantastic and so much fun and all over the map. And I love it.
From Los Angeles to Texas and back again. The other thing I was going to say is that I feel like there aren't like very many shows that are set in Los Angeles. And whenever I do get one that's set in LA, I'm always like, oh, I know that. Like literally in the pilot where they were like, yeah, well, I was down the PCH. Oh, when I went on the 101 and I'm like, the 101 is right there. At the Bonaventure. Like, of course there was traffic on the 101. Like that's just something that really scratches an itch for me because everything's either set in New York or in nondescript town. Like, so I love it when LA just comes up. My parents had their wedding reception actually at the Bonaventure in 1988. So I have a deep connection with this show.
I feel like you buried the lead, Sergio.
There's a great documentary called LA Plays Itself. And it's all like at the time that it had been made, like film and TV references to LA being LA on the big screen.
That sounds like something I need to find.
Well,
Thank you.
What's great when you come in the parking garage of the Bonaventure and you're coming up into it, we discovered that they actually have walls showing with all the movie posters that have been shot at the Bonaventure. At first, we thought it was like, oh, they must have a movie theater here and they're showing these weird movies. Why is that? And then we realized, no, these are the movies that were shot here because they're very random.
And not only that, we didn't go to all the elevators, but one of the elevators we went to, there was actually a plaque that indicated that scenes from a certain movie were shot at this location in these elevators. So they're very, very proud of this.
And I'm not saying we may have shot a little spoof parody video where myself and Melissa and Sharon are maybe recreating the opening of It's a Living, but
keep an eye out on your social medias, ladies and gentlemen.
And we tried to get Megan and Sergio to join us, but couldn't because we wanted to fill it with all five of us. But Serita was in Texas, for God's sake.
I'm the Texan, you know?
And we cannot thank you guys enough for watching the episodes and for joining us today and talking to us about it. This has been great as always.
We'll have you back sooner rather than later. We got lots more shows to cover.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
In today's audiography, you can watch It's a Living on Amazon, Tubi, or YouTube.
If you want to learn about real life safe gun storage, you can check out Be Smart for Kids and Mom's Demand. We love hearing from you. Please send us messages at our website, 80stvladies.com. If you like our podcast, please rate and review us.
5-star ratings really help us a lot. Next time on 80s TV Ladies, we've got the authors of the upcoming Scarecrow and Mrs. King book, including David Johnson, another Martha Smith recommendation.
Hey, did any of you listeners play along? Did you watch the homework assignment that we gave to our 90s TV babies in season 2, episode 10? If so, what did you think of It's a Living?
We'd love to hear what you think. We hope 80s TV Ladies brings you joy and laughter and lots of fabulous new and old shows to watch, all of which will lead us forward toward being amazing ladies of the 21st century.
Yay!
80s TV Ladies.